scan to use social media.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I've got someone with me today that's certainly no stranger to Cafe Locked-Out, the one and only Michael Gray Griffith, the founder of Cafe Locked-Out. G'day, Michael.
I can't believe what an intro you've got.
I just compiled that at the last minute.
I should get an intro.
How's it going?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the stunning stories of the today is our Premier Jacinta Allen celebrating the factory has been opened. You know,
the mRNA, the
100
celebration
million
of our
mRNA
demise.
jabs, plenty for all of us.
Unbelievable. Despite all the information that's out there that has come out recently, not to mention Karen Phelps, who was the biggest vaccine spruiker fanatic in Australia, but then all the other information that's come out since then with all of these people that previously promoted the jab have now come clean and said, look, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. Here we've got the Victorian state government led by Jacinta Allen, Comrade Allen, doubling down and saying, hey, we've got this beautiful mRNA factory. So they're clearly openly celebrating our demise.
Yeah, I know. And she says you can have it for anything, any of your ailments. They can add a bit of this, add a bit of that. You got it. You know what I mean? You don't like pimples?
Snake
Here,
oil.
got a vaccine. Yeah, no worries.
mRNA snake oil.
Just scrub off gene therapy and put pimple treatment. There you go. You know, yeah, it's insane. It truly is insane.
We live in it's a madhouse.
It's a divided country.
Lunatics are running the asylum.
Yeah, it's a divided country. Well, I think it's clear it's just business. I've never seen another sign of how clearly this is business, because if she was truly a governor of the people, and I said this in a rant today, there's no way she wouldn't pause and go, hey, listen, last time you rushed this product to market because we had a pandemic, but now we don't have a pandemic. So why don't we take a 10-year moratorium and test it properly? Nah.
You know, Australia follows America, and there's talk now with Bobby Kennedy being in charge of health as a health secretary that they're going to remove the immunity from Big Pharma. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Australia. It'll be interesting to see what the ramifications are for people like Jacinta Allen, who are promoting this. I mean, even though she's not directly working for Big Pharma, she might end up being in Big Pharma once she leaves politics. But even she could be liable, potentially.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, or Dan. He was not in jail. Anyway, thank you for getting me on today. So today, the reason I actually asked to come on is, in this last 4 years, we've seen a lot of division, a lot of hate. The anti-vaxxers themselves have become like the Jews of pre-war Germany, and now I see hate on the rise again, coming from every angle, and that's what I wanted to come on and talk about. So thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure. It's an honor to have you on. And some Jews, from making a Holocaust analogy, they would get very triggered and offended. There are quite a few Jews out there that would, but me, on the contrary, I think it's a very apt analogy. And look, I've experienced, obviously, as an openly Jewish man, I have.
Sorry,
Oh,
we didn't go to the Holocaust, but when it was first happening, that was the same as when the Nazis were saying, okay, they're the problem. They were,
yeah.
they had to work in they weren't allowed in shops, they weren't allowed to do commerce and stuff. We went in the first part of it. We didn't end up in a Holocaust. The
Well,
death camps,
not yet
everyone else
anyway,
did.
God forbid.
Yeah, that's
Not
right.
yet, God forbid. We almost did. I think it was, a miracle, a divine miracle that we didn't. If we kept going on that trajectory, we could have quite easily ended up that way. But I think, look, some people get very offended with using any type of Holocaust analogy, but I think it's a very apt analogy. How are we supposed to learn from the past and not repeat the mistakes of the past? We could keep suppressing it and not acknowledging it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I want to say, as a side point, look, I've, since October 7th, I've experienced prejudice, and even prior to October 7th, as an openly Jewish person, and I've been spat on and abused. But I can tell you that
Really?
that the discrimination that I faced during COVID, in my opinion, and I'm only speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for other Jews, was worse. It was a lot worse, in my opinion, as someone that didn't take the vaccine.
So before you were born, did you check, I want the hardest life, that you're going to be an unvaccinated
Possibly.
Jew,
You should have seen the looks that I
Can I
got
pick
when
the
I
trans
was
box
the
too? Can I pick the
only.
trans? I want to be an unvaccinated trans Jew.
Well, you should have seen the looks that I got when I was walking around without a mask on at work and on public transport as an openly
Yeah,
Jewish guy. Very
especially
strange
balaclava.
looks. Yeah.
Balaclava was very
So
compliant, surprisingly. Yeah. What sort of things did you face in that time? Can you remember one incident that stood out?
there were a few. It's very hard for me to isolate one particular incident. There were a few incidences, and look, what affected me the most, and this was by design. The globalists and this, their apparatchiks in the state government, led by Dan Andrews, were very clever in dividing us all. And what hurt me the most wasn't so much what was happening outside of my community; it's the fact that members of my own community turned on me and other people, other Jews that refused to comply, and that really hurt me the most. So
we need to talk about this because it affects what we're going to talk about tonight.
And I'm sure there are, everyone can relate to this. I mean, everyone we've got people from all different religious backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds, and I can guarantee that they were all going through the same thing, division with their families, with their communities, their churches, their mosques. So, and like I said, it's all by design.
We have a new show on with that I'm really fond of called Matt Lawson and Kelly, and they, Matt was the first person since Eureka Stockade protester to be shot by the police, and he's shot by a rubber bullet. I was there. He just went up to him with his hands up. He just wanted peace, and they shot him point blank. It was just brutality.
I saw that. I remember.
Yeah,
I remember that.
and
I wasn't there, unfortunately, but I saw the live stream.
Yeah, I was pepper sprayed just a few moments later, and but it was And I had a great sign. I had a sign that said Australia, land of the free, as long as you do as you're told. And I got a picture of it somewhere. And oh, maybe it's not
That's
here.
why they pepper
And,
sprayed you. You made yourself a target, a lightning rod for pepper
oh
spray.
no,
Keep getting pepper
they were.
sprayed.
I had this great picture. They were pepper spraying. They didn't care. They were pepper spraying before the crowd even did anything. They were just being aggressive. And we've heard now from other inside police sources that they were told to be highly aggressive against us initially.
Wow.
You know, yeah. So that's the rumor.
And is
Yeah.
this, is this what they, they wake up every morning? I'm just wondering what's going through their heads. Are they asking themselves questions? Is this what I signed up for? Is this why I became a police officer? Is this why I joined the anti-terror squad
Yeah.
to go and go after? I shouldn't laugh, but you go after grandmothers and pregnant women. That's what they use the anti-terror squad for.
Yeah, well, I took this photo here. So I took that photo just before being shot on King Street, and that's what those guys were doing.
Wow.
Shooting at grandmothers, shooting windows, shooting anybody. They shot me, but they didn't care. They were just being brutal. It was as though we were armed terrorists, and most of us didn't even have signs. We were just protesting for our rights. And these were our brothers and sisters. They were Victorians. I know now because I've talked to one of them. They went from overseas. They went Interpol or anything else. These were Victorian citizens, and they attacked their brothers and sisters, their mothers, their grandmothers, their sons and daughters. And why they did it? Because they were told to, or maybe they enjoyed it. You look at the shooting of the shrine that Rukshan shot, which is probably probably up there with the most historical footage in Australian history, to be honest. There's him and Joel. There's another guy, I can't remember his name offhand. He also was running around filming while he was being shot at. But if you watch Rukshan's footage, what he captured wasn't just the shooting, but it was the excitement and joy that the people had, officers had, who were shooting people in the back who were running away. I mean, you see them there, bang, bang, bang. If
Unbelievable.
they'd have real bullets, they probably would have shot them as well.
You could
That,
easily kill someone with those pellets. They could be
yeah,
lethal.
easily,
I mean, they
yeah,
caused a lot of injuries, like you said to Matt Lawson. That really took him out. He ended up in
yeah,
hospital.
yeah, yeah,
And what
yeah.
are
He
these
still
cops
had
doing
brain
now?
damage.
Where are they now? They're complaining about their pay, and they expect the public sympathy. They're trying to, bring up
Yeah,
public sympathy for themselves.
yeah. It's sad because they're the ones that could heal this, because if they came out and said, "Look, we're not going to do that again. We don't know what happened," and we realized everything was crazy. If they could come and explain themselves, I think people would be ready to listen. And then once they did do that, it'd be very hard for the government to do anything next time because all Dan Andrews really had was them. The police
Mm.
was his rod of iron. If he didn't
Is
have them, we wouldn't have, we probably got out of lockdowns a lot sooner. They were
they're
the
his
ones
private
that
army.
allowed it to happen. Yeah, they were. Yeah. And that's
It
where
was
I
surreal.
see the correlation between early not early 1930s Germany and how the Jews were set aside as they're the trouble. And
Mm.
and that same thing was said for us, except they called us Nazis, which I thought was hilarious. They're dressed up like
Mm.
those armored vehicles. They're shooting us with rubber bullets, but we're the
Acting
Nazis.
like stormtroopers with their helmets and
So yeah, it was an attack on language and everything. But yeah, but let's talk about the reason I want to talk about Israel is not to sort of, if you'd allow me, is not so much to talk about what's going on, but it's to talk about humanity's um, appetite to hate,
mm.
because we're not born with the ability to hate. Anyone who's had a baby knows that babies do not come out of the womb hating until another baby comes along, and then maybe they go, okay,
Yeah, then there's a rival.
a rival, But the first baby, there's no hate in that baby. They're
Mm.
happy. all they want is love and feed and sleep and this, most of the time, unless there's something wrong. I believe we're born with the ability to love and fear, and the hate is taught to us from various angles. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's from mainstream media, from the politicians. I mean, our politicians now call us cookers. Our prime minister
That's
uses
right.
the term.
Mm.
This is to spread hate, and this is beneath a man of his stature, really. But he just does it because which
It suits the
shows,
government. It suits the establishment. If
yeah,
we're all divided, we're all distracted, and they can do whatever they want. Whilst we're distracted with hating each other.
yeah. Now, early on, when this happened, you and I did an interview with an Israeli security guard, and I think you did too with him. So there are real serious questions about the initial border crossing.
Mm.
But the reason I haven't got into it is, one, I'm really powerless to do anything about it. But two, I really feel like great powers are determined to make the world turn to hate and hate each other, turn brother against brother, sister against sister. And this is what we're seeing. And they're just wanting us attacking and attacking. And I haven't myself, you see images from both sides of the conflict, and you do get disgust, and it's vile and it's ugly. But rather than hating or being taught to hate this brother or that brother, all I'm really doing, and not that I'm of any worth, is grieving for all of
Mm.
them. I'm even grieving for the ones doing the violence,
Mm.
because at some point they're going to have to
They're
deal.
brainwashed.
Yeah, they're going to have to deal with what
Mm.
they've done and the things in their souls. There's no winners here, except
That's right.
someone above them who they'll never meet.
The
The
powers that
rest,
shall not be.
yeah, the rest is just poor people suffering, and suffering, as we've done all through history.
Mm.
And and I want to talk. I mean, I have no grievances or anything. I have support for the Palestinians. I have support for the Israel, not so much for their different nationalities, but for their right to be human beings and their right to live in peace
Mm.
and their right to just discover who they are and have a life where they're not constantly worried that they're going to be shot or they're going to have to participate in violence. And it's interesting with the Jews, because there's been a hatred of the Jews forever, and I hear it now in people all the time. It surprises me, and it comes out, and I hear a real hatred for them. And it's not a real hatred, actually. I feel it's a manufactured hatred by what they're being shown. They're the audience, and they're reacting the correct way because they've been shown the stuff, and they're shown the footage. And my thing is, I don't know how to stop that. But what I wanted to bring up is just a discussion about how, if it's possible, we can heal hate, no matter how awful things were. And is it possible, or is hate like an incurable cancer in a situation like Israel and the Middle East? Is it just incurable? The hate is driven by powerful forces, or do you know what I mean? It's because it's been a conflict my whole life,
Mm.
and I'm not Jewish. I'm not part of it, but I just wonder what it would take for maybe I'm sounding airy fairy, but for hate to finally be challenged.
Mm.
And what is there? What are your thoughts? I'm just rambling on now, brother.
Sure. No. So you made a good point there that the hate is manufactured, no different to the type of hate and division that we saw during COVID. This
Yeah.
manufactured hate is being pushed by the same people that have pushed the division during COVID. It's all part of a psyop. It's part of an agenda. Look, at the end of the day, I'm human. Obviously, I've got my biases, and there's gonna be people in the chat and people that are watching that are gonna disagree with what I have to say, and that's perfectly okay. We're all entitled to our opinions, and we all have our own biases. But to look at what you're seeing at the moment, if you ask any Jewish person in Australia, what is the root source of this hatred? Because the establishment likes people to believe, they push this narrative that it's coming from the neo-Nazi right. If you speak to the average Jewish person on the street, Australian Jew, they will tell you the opposite. They will tell you that the source of this hatred comes from the far left, from the ABC, from the universities, from academia, from the Labor Party, from the Greens. They have been, and other media sources that are controlled by the far left and have been for a very long time. And they have been pushing this hatred for many, many decades, this demonization. And what they're doing is they're very clever in how they do this. They push the hatred, they promote it, they exacerbate it. The origins of this hatred, I mean, I don't know how long we've got, but, there's a lot to cover.
Some examples?
But yeah, that's okay. The origin of this hatred goes all the way back to after the war, like right after the war finished. So up until then, you had, a very overt Nazi-style hatred of Jews, which was based on the Aryan race and racism and eugenics, and the Jews and other races, the Slavs and other races and religions were Untermenschen, were subhuman. Stalin and Hitler were cut from the same cloth. People forget that even though Stalin did fight Hitler, the reason why he went to war with Hitler was because Hitler betrayed him. But they were two peas in a pod. They were birds of a feather. And they were initially allies. So people forget that when Hitler invaded Poland, the Soviets invaded Poland from the east. It was a joint allied invasion. And a lot of people in the left conveniently like to brush this history over. They like to talk about Franco, which is true. They did fight Franco, and they fought. In London, they fought against Mosley. So they like to talk about that history, but they don't like to talk about this history that I've mentioned. They like to brush it over. And many people in the academia at the time, many of the leftists supported this alliance that Stalin had with Hitler, right up until Hitler betrayed him and threw him under the bus and decided to invade the Soviet Union. So after the war finished, fast forward a little bit, Stalin had a brief alliance. The Soviet Union had a brief alliance with Israel in 1948. People think that America had always had Israel's back. That's not true. America only became involved after the Yom Kippur War, more so after Israel gave away the Sinai inside a peace treaty with Egypt. The America-Israel alliance firmly become set in stone. But in 1948, the only country that tried to help Israel, they sent them limited arms, was the Soviet Union, and they sent some arms, very limited supply, through Czechoslovakia. The Arab armies were supported by the British. They were, especially the Jordanians, and they were also supported by Nazi war criminals. Their armies were led into battle by British generals and colonels. One was Sir John Glubb. But at some point after the War of Independence, after 1948, Israel had decided to distance itself from the Soviet Union. And Stalin felt very betrayed. And he was always an anti-Semite. He always hated Jews. But by that time, he essentially was very angry, and he started a wave of persecution against Jews. But he couldn't use the Nazi style because that became very out of fashion, very unpopular. So he decided to do it in a more covert rather than overt way, and he would use dog whistles. So he would say, instead of Jews, he would use the term rootless cosmopolitans. He would also use the term Zionists. And the left pretty much lapped it up, and the left, including the left in Australia, followed suit. They did whatever the Soviet Union did. They were heavily influenced by it, and they pretty much, were using all of the talking points that the Soviets were using. But today's propaganda for the last 50 years, the anti-Jewish propaganda that's supposedly anti-Zionist, although, it's true that, one can have very valid criticisms of Zionism. So I'm not denying that. But this carefully crafted anti-Semitism was specifically designed by the far left, by the radical left. It was really a hatred of Jews, and that's what we're seeing today. And we no longer have the Soviet Union, but countries like China, the communist China, the CCP, and there's other state actors as well, are very much involved in sponsoring this hatred all around and promoting this hatred all around the world.
Why is that?
I've gone on a bit of a rant.
That's all right. Why is that? Is that for power?
Yes, it's simple. The short answer is yes. Power, division. They want people divided. It suits the Western governments as well, because any form of hatred, whether it's anti-Semitism or any other type of prejudice, keeps the population distracted. But there's another dimension to this. You see, when they're actively promoting this, and the ALP, both the federal government and the state Labor government, are actively encouraging it, but there's another more sinister dimension to this. They then blame this hatred, this manifestation of anti-Semitism and Jew hatred, on the right and on groups like the Freedom Movement. The problem is we have people within the Freedom Movement and in other right-wing movements that I believe are infiltrators, that have infiltrated the movement, that are government plants. And there are a lot of very decent people in the Freedom Movement, but unfortunately there are some elements within the movement who are only too willing to lap it up. And when they hear the talking points about the Zionists, the Jews, et cetera, they're like Pavlov. They react like Pavlov's dogs, and they're only too keen to lap it up and promote those talking points. And it's used basically to spin this narrative that, the Freedom Movement are a bunch of radical extremist Nazis. And I would like to point out that you had a guest, a big pharma shill. I forgot his name, but he didn't use his name when he went on your show. I remember he went on a couple times, and you and Dr. Paul debated him, and Professor Altman debated him a number of times. And if you can recall, he kept going back to this talking point in a bit to discredit you. And this is really by design. This is really sinister. He kept bringing up the Hazarian Mafia, which is a bogus theory. I mean, I know that there's people that are watching this that believe in this theory. You're entitled to your opinion. That's fine. In my opinion, it's it's complete BS. And it's a theory that's used, again, that's been planted in the Freedom Movement in a bid by the establishment, in a bid to discredit us. And he kept bringing it up in a bid to discredit you, even though he kept making these bogus straw man arguments, fallacies. You've never even mentioned the Hazarian Mafia, but he kept bringing it up he kept mocking you and saying, the Hazarian Mafia, the Hazarian Mafia. And that was a sinister ploy, a straw man argument to really just make you look like, and a form of gaslighting to make you look like nutcases, basically. He never addressed your arguments. He just kept making these stupid, silly straw man fallacies.
To be honest, with the first time he came on, Dr. William agreed to come on with me, and we kind of guessed his character and knew that all it would be was a slanging match. So we decided that because we would be the face of the Freedom Movement, that no matter what happened, we would not lose our temper. We would stay calm, we would stay rational, and then he could do what he wanted. And of course, he just did what he did. And so some people say he won because of facts and stuff, but I don't think there would have been the outside probably would have always gone this way, So my thing was to try show the world, because I thought it would be a lot of people watching in the Where, that we were ready to talk and we were just decent people. And so that was the strategy. It was hard.
I noticed that your channel,
He's annoying.
oh, to say the least, I don't know how
But
you
when
were
he
able to
came on
deal
the
with him. You're a
second
very, very
time,
patient person.
yeah, when he came on the second time, then he brought up a thing that he uses all the time. It's so funny. It's called nocebo, where he reckons we, people like you and I, are so powerful in our articulation that if we say, you're going to get myocarditis from this vaccine, then they get it, because
Well,
we've
trust the
basically
science. What a rational argument.
we've manifested it in them. The vaccine was safe and effective, but old Miko told them it wasn't, and now they've manifested myocarditis, even though they don't know what the symptoms are. And so
in other words, he
he spends
believes in
all the
black
time.
magic
Yeah, that's right.
and
Pointing
the
the
occult.
bone.
Yeah.
So it's witch doctor stuff. Yeah, considering he's supposed to be a anyway, I don't get into him because, well, he's a perfect example. All I've seen coming out of him is bitterness, hate, and he's a doctor, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? You just think that naturally, this is what I'm saying. Maybe I'm an idealist, but you would think that naturally, one of the most foundational emotions of a doctor would be empathy, would be reason, would be the ability to listen to everyone, sit there and come wisely, not to go on this, lying rampage.
You're
Anyway,
incredibly patient. I remember that interview, watching that in full, and I don't know how you're able to deal with him.
it's all theatre. There's but this is where we're getting back to here. And my thing is, it's like when I was growing up, there was still, you heard some people say things about Jews, but not much. There was not many Jews around, even though I traveled a lot as a kid. There was a hatred of the indigenous, without a
Mm.
doubt. Called them all these other names. They were a subspecies of human. That's how they were treated, second class humans. There was a hatred of Russia because of the
Cold
we had the
War.
Cold War going on. Anytime these people are just going to bomb us, but we never met any Russians. And there was, to a degree, a fading hatred of gays, not lesbians, just gay men. So this gay
Mm.
bashing would still happen and stuff like this, and these were the three hatreds really.
Mm.
And then they waned. Now you know you live near Ballaghy, you live St Kilda. You know what I mean? It's almost, it's gay's it's not an issue anymore whatsoever. That's not an issue. Russia, people are emigrating to Russia for freedom now. People who can't
Mm.
even speak Russian, because Russia is offering people a freer life than here, which is insane. So that's, I mean, I know we're in a war with Russia, but I think people's view of Russians is different. Uh, but now I can see the Jews coming up with this. And I'm really interested as to what people get from hating. Now, I understand if someone hurt someone in my family. I've never heard that had that happen. So I could understand that. But I just think one of the real losers in being consumed by hate is the person who is consumed by hate. You know what I mean? And it's I have had issues with people in the past that, and I have hated, but I managed to get past it. But I haven't been through probably just the segregation of the stuff that I saw during COVID. So I'm not, I can't claim the experience of watching my people being killed or anything like that. But what are your thoughts on that? How do we, as a species, somehow get back to um, past that, or is it just it's just a part of our nature? We can't help ourselves. I mean, a lot of the hatred towards Jews is just global tall poppy syndrome. You know, people
Mm.
don't like seeing other people succeeding, and unfortunately, the Jews are very successful in often what they do. I've actually told people in the freedom movement we should be like the Jews. What I mean by that is we should do commerce amongst each other. We should cement our customs and create an identity for ourselves as an entire movement and be proud of ourselves, no matter how much hate is sent towards us. We're proud of ourselves. We're proudly unvaccinated, or we're proud, or if we've had the vaccine and we don't want any more vaccines, yeah, we're proudly unvaccinated or anti-vaxxers. We're proud of it and display it. But instead, we blend into society like everyone else. We don't know. Often you can be with someone you don't know until something trips them up. Where the Jews are prominently, like yourself, are prominent. It's like the Sikhs. You know what I mean? And so I think there's a lot of lessons that we could learn uh, from the Jewish community in order to strengthen ours, because it's quite clear now with the premier coming out today celebrating all the vaccines that we are going to be discriminated against long into the future.
Mm.
So we can either uh, become economically destitute and hide away in pockets like little gatherings here or there, or online little secret online chat groups, like we're embarrassed to be who we are, or we can actually learn to celebrate our immense strength and courage and the beauty of our tribe and actually stand up and face it with our heads up and going, yeah, that's us. We're the freedom movement. And so there was a question in there, and then I kind of rambled on. But if you can get back to the
Uh,
question,
So
it's
I think, look, sometimes I wish I was a psychologist. I'm not, but I could only give an opinion, make assumptions, resort to conjecture. But I think within people, even though we're not born as babies to immediately hate, I think there's something within our animal nature. We've got a certain tribal nature where we identify with certain groups of people, like whether it's our immediate family, a close group of friends, and we become cliquey and tribal. And then, we see other people that might look different, or just another group, and it could be a rivalry, us and them, or even rivalry within siblings. You don't even have to have external groups within families,
yeah.
like in the biblical story of Cain and Abel. So I think it's a very innate, it's a very primitive and part of ourselves, part of our animal nature, that we've got this in us. And I think the powers that should not be the global elite are very know our psychology, our makeup to the back, like the back of their hands. I mean, they've got the best psychiatrists analyzing us as well, 24/7. So they know our weaknesses, all of our weak points, and they play on it and they exploit it, and they're doing a bloody good job. Everything
Mm.
that they're doing, it's not just the Jews. I'm not claiming that it's just the Jews. They always pick on other people, whether it's unvaccinated, even Muslims. Islamophobia I acknowledge that to be a real thing. It's definitely real.
Oh, it's absolutely
So
real. I
yeah.
mean, it's absolutely real. I mean, there was a thing coming out about 15 years ago where it said, um, uh, something of it. Be alarmed, be awake or alarmed or something. It was something to telling you to watch your neighbors all the time. But basically, what it was saying is, dob your neighbor in if they're Muslim. That was the subtext of the posters. You know what I mean?
Mm.
There's and it was interesting then, because I wrote this comedy about a wealthy Muslim man who brought his a nephew over from his country, and his nephew was an accountant, but he robbed everybody, or he put him in touch with all his friends. He robbed them all, and he ended up broke. And a friend, his last friend in the world, said, "I've got you a house for you to live until you get you back on your street." And it was in Balaclava, next to a Jewish family. So these two families, and the house was conjoined. And the first night they were there, the wind blew down the fence. And so it was how they came to work together. And they also got jobs because both of the men were broke because of various things. They got jobs as security guard, and they were both big, and they were squashed together in this security guard. They were forced together. I know it sounds funny, but it was really interesting to work. And I had Jews read it and loved it. And I had an Islamic guy read it. And he goes, "This is bloody great," because it was how they were getting on. But the ABC, everyone said, "Nah, no way." I said, "But it spreads hope. It spreads hope. They get on. You know what I mean? They get on. They don't like make love or anything, but it shows that there's hope. You know what I mean? It's a quiet time now. It's a good time to put it on." Nah, no way. So there was no interest in telling a story. This is what Yuval Harari says. Humans get motivated by stories. You go to World War I, or you go to the war because the Nazis are killing kids and this. Men get into stories. And so we're constantly being hit by stories. And so it's very interesting when you get something that you think could spread hope and they're not even interested, because
It doesn't suit
there's
their
no
narrative.
power.
That's
There's
right.
no power in getting humans getting on. How can they control us if suddenly we get past our differences? Even when I was a tram driver, I started
You were a tram
writing,
driver.
yeah, for 10 years, just because I had kids, as an artist, and I did these shitty jobs. This is before we made it as a playwright. So you do whatever you can. And I used to, I'd go insane driving the tram. It was insane job. But I'd write about the people,
That's pretty
because
cool.
then I used to look at the tram and I would see everyone on the tram: Muslims, Jews, Africans, Asians, Australians, other white nationalities, everyone squashed in, nobody fighting each other, no racist comments, no blacks at the front, whites at the thing. I saw every nationality standing up for other old ladies and pregnant women. I saw people left alone, just getting on. And that's what I believe most human beings want. They want to be left alone and they get on. This happened in the Yugoslavian war. Before Yugoslavia, Croatia, they all started fighting
That's
each other.
right.
But previous to that, Muslim Croats, they were mates. This is it. We are basically tricked into hating our brother. And this is, I know it's very hard because we see terrible things and we see those things on purpose. Like I noticed on Instagram, they show children, with their heads blown off stuff. You post a picture of a woman's breast, it gets taken down because it goes against community guidelines.
That's right.
You post anything from me, and usually Cafe Lockdown's in trouble for posting a person speaking openly about their life, but you post kids blown apart, there you go. This is done to horrify you and cause hate. And I'm not saying it is horrific, but we are being played. And that's
It's
why
part of a psyop.
I haven't spoke on it for this. It's like the red ants, black ants. You know that thing, you get red ants, black ants in a jar, they get on peacefully. Then if you shake the jar, they attack each other thinking the other one's shaking the jar. But other forces are shaking us. And this would be my plea to people out there, is to realize this. And to realize, like in Australia, previous to, except of course for how the Indigenous were treated, but we really haven't got those ancient hatreds in the country because we're new. We don't have this grand canyon of grief that we can't breach, that so many countries have, like Rwanda and other places. We just can't. It's too deep. And the only way to keep it like that is to actually wake up to the fact that you are often going to be played, and their main goal is to make you hate your brother or your sister, to
Exactly.
be disillusioned. And you saw that in COVID. You know, the vaccinated told the unvaccinated they couldn't come to Christmas. That was a defeat of love. They couldn't go to church, a defeat of love.
But
Couldn't
they
go to
could
the
go to a
synagogue.
brothel.
You could go to a brothel.
Mm.
You know what I mean? This was
Trust the science.
an insult. You know what I mean? And so that's we were played then, and we played along. But we don't have to play along. You don't have to, even though you can't escape the lessons of hate, you don't have to blitz the exam. You can fail it. You can go, I'm not going to do it. I'm 58 years old now. And probably one of my only accomplishments is I've got to here, and I'm not bitter. I'm not full of hate or rage. You know what I mean? And I still covered hope, and I still covered love. And I think it can be small things, even like you, Leon, coming on the show, where we have someone like Richard who doesn't like Jews. You know what I mean? And or certain things. And so here we have this on here, this edginess, but we still come on. And to me, that's what Cafe Lockdown could be. So we're open to other people from other nationalities coming on. Here it is saying we can, if we are wise enough to see what's actually happening, see below the theatrics, we can become a country of great hope, of great wisdom, of great humanity, where we treat each other with dignity, and we just end up having a far better, more enriched life, and a far better world we can leave to our kids. And we can achieve that through basically just having some emotional wisdom.
That's the key, definitely. Having some wisdom, emotional wisdom, taking a step back. And look, again, people in that are watching tonight, everyone has their own opinion. They're certainly entitled to it. But one thing that I would ask at least is use the discernment. I mean, everyone's got really good discernment here. And they saw through the bullshit during COVID. They saw the fake images that were presented to them for people dying, collapsing in China, and people in hospitals in Australia and in Italy. And they knew that it was fake. They smelled a rat. Horrific images, but they're all fake, and they use crisis actors. When you see images presented to you in conflicts, especially with Israel, we see these horrific graphic images of children with their heads blown off. All I'm asking is just take a step back. I mean, you don't have to change your view, but at least take a step back and use the same discernment that you used during COVID. I mean, supposedly the media is controlled by the Jews and it's serving Jewish interests, and yet you're getting this information that's making you hate Jews. And there's a lot of documented evidence that a lot of these images, they're either appropriated from other conflicts, some of which involve sectarian Muslim on Muslim violence, like Syria, with kids having their heads blown off. And in some cases, the images are staged and they use crisis actors. You don't have to take my word for it, but at the very least, don't trust everything that you see. Don't accept it at face value, and just take a step back, especially if you've got no skin in the game. I can understand Muslims. It's very normal if you're directly involved, and it's your own group that's directly involved in the conflict, that you're going to take sides. But if you don't have any, if you're just an Aussie and you live on the other side of the world and you've got no skin in the game, at the very least you could afford to just have the luxury to take a step back and just at least question the information that's being presented in front of you.
Well, we've seen fake actors in everything. We saw them in COVID. We had, and we knew them. We said they had they actually advertised for them, then made the ads, not realizing we'd kept the adverts. And so they had people come up. You remember there was all these young people, oh, yeah, I've got it. Oh, I'm sick. It was all ads. And they had to get actors because no one was actually sick. And not many. There's the other interesting thing, though, is with the Jews seem to cop it more than others. Well, I guess the Muslims do too. Is it's like one person does something and the entire race is painted with the same brush.
Well, we actually
And
saw that with the Russians.
yeah, the
When
Russians as well.
before
It's something
October
they do.
7th, the Russians were
Yeah,
demonized. They were targeted on Australian universities and on the streets of Australia. They were
yeah,
demonized. They were isolated. The people that were affected the most were Russian international students. They really took the brunt of it, being demonized as these evil, wicked people. But then when October 7th happened, everyone forgot about Ukraine and they went to the next psyop.
yeah. That's true. Actually, that is true. Yeah, there's a and we're and then now like Black Lives Matter, Ukraine, now Israel. There's a lot of people that you wonder, are they getting into it because they really believe it or it's just trendy now? It's like the 60s. Hey, what are we protesting today? You know what I mean? Because I hadn't actually been an active part in any major protest before. I'd gone to a few protests, but not minor things. But I was there because I could see freedom of freedom of choice was being removed, and they were actively saying we're going to remove your freedoms. And my thing was saying, hey, you have to talk to us before you do that. You don't tell us. You know what I mean? And so that's where I became involved. And then after that, we saw everything, and that sort of changed me. But right now, I see an Australia that's in danger of. Well, there's great hope here because we beat the MAD bill, and I think waking up. That term actually means exactly what you said. Stand back and have a look, because I think in the 4 years we were in danger of Australians almost being like sheep, being led wherever
Being
they
slaughter.
said. Yeah. But we are seeing, like, if you watch the comments now on Jacinta Allen, I think her name is Jacinta Allen,
That's right.
announcement about the factory, um, there's hardly one comment in favor, you know. So now we have a conflict there. But
That's a silver lining. They overplayed that psyop with the vaccines, and now they've turned a large segment of the population into anti-vaxxers unwittingly.
yeah, yeah. They're talking about the health minister in Adelaide's talking about vaccinating babies as soon as they're born about this something or other, and there's a complete removal of God, really. And what I mean by God is that they're basically saying, look, the baby's coming to this world, and this world is far more dangerous than when the plague was around or when we were cavemen. Now you've got running water, you've got clean air, you've got good, healthy food. There's no actual war in the country. So it's really dangerous, and your baby needs to be vaccinated about these things as soon as he comes out of the womb, because the universe or God sent your child here incapable of surviving unless their veins are full of pharmaceutical shit, you know?
And then you have the
That's
correlation with the rise of autism at the same time they started rolling out these
no, you don't
schedules.
talk
What
about
a
that.
what a
Can't be that.
coincidence.
Can't be that, you know.
Something
But
else, ozone layer.
could we go back a bit deeper? Where do you think the initial hatred of Jews comes from, in your opinion? Why have people, is it just the success of the Jews? What is it that irks people so much? Because the Amish, I wouldn't say they're similar, but the Amish don't seem to cop as much hate. And yet, the Orthodox Jew and the Amish, they're like, how would you put them? They're similar in the fact that they've got strong customs that they live by and stuff. What is it?
Well, I think the Amish are very isolated. They live in these remote communities in scattered around Pennsylvania and some other states on the eastern
Idaho, I
seaboard of the
think,
United
yeah.
States. So they're quite isolated and remote, and they live in these medieval type, villages. But the Jews, look, that hatred has been around since time immemorial. It's a very irrational hatred from an Orthodox Jewish perspective. It probably, comes down to, it goes all the way back to the biblical Esau and Jacob, their rivalry, and we believe that that's the spiritual origin of that hatred. Esau was Jacob's older brother, and his descendants founded the Roman Empire. They became the Romans, and some other dominant groups. And but we believe also that Esau had a good side. But we, from our perspective, it's sourced spiritually. But from a physical, material perspective, it's throughout time it's been used by various governments and regimes to essentially distract and divide people. And the Jews were the low-hanging fruit, but they also targeted other groups as well, not just the Jews. But it just so happened that a lot of the times the Jews were the primary targets in a lot of cases, whether it was by the Nazis or the Tsarist regime or by the communists in the Soviet Union.
With your
And
customs, do you think the customs were over time, how would you say, like a form of natural immunity, like defense, like a celebration of a physical celebration of your culture and of yourselves? You know what I mean? I'm just interested to where these strong customs came from, and other civilizations have them as well, but the Jews have them. Customs in Jews is a really big thing, and I wonder if that's born from oppression that actually binds you together, and the customs actually hold you together through difficult times. Or am I just?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the customs are very important. They're what's keeping us together. And we spoke offline before. You also spoke about the dress code. So in Orthodox circles, that's very important. They deliberately, dress a certain way. And obviously this, in the form of Ashkenazi Orthodox Jews, it comes from Eastern Europe, and there's different sects. And you've got the, Hungarian sect, the more prominent one, where they wear the fur hats, and they grow their, what they're called the payos, their hair very long. And those customs are by designed to keep them all together, essentially, and avoid them from losing their identity. So
For being
that's
lost in the greater herd.
That's right, exactly.
Because the freedom movement, one thing I've brought up at gatherings, that's why we tried to have 832 as a symbol to make us. I don't have one here, do I? Yeah, here's one. So they wear these badges and stuff, and it was almost taking off. It didn't really take off in the end. There's flags and stuff, and I'm going to a gathering this weekend. There'll be a lot of 832 stuff there, but the idea behind it was to identify ourselves from the greater herd, because one of the problems people in the freedom movement, or people who didn't want to follow the government narrative, was they felt completely isolated, and they didn't know who was and who wasn't on their side. And so when the hippies were around, the hippies had tie-dye. You knew, whether you liked them or not, you knew what the hippie, you knew they were a hippie, you had some idea what they stood for. Same with the Jewish guy, same with the Amish man, same with the Sikh. Straight, whether you find it funny, whether whatever, you know exactly what they stand for. And I'm wondering if we are going to continue to be sort of seen as this fringe group, whether the similar sort of something will emerge that will allow us to identify each other, or whether we would have to actually become courageous enough to be brave of who we are. I mean, it's easy for me. I live in a bus that basically says, I don't like the government. So, but uh, but I have a lot of people giving me the thumbs up. Lots of people, all different
Silent
races.
majority.
Yeah, they drive by the bus and they go like this. It's like, okay, hardly anyone the other way.
I'm sure they
Usually, like,
watch your show
bro,
too.
I don't know about that, but the thing is that and I do wonder if it could, and also the other thing I tell people is the Jews are very good, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm only going by Woody Allen and Seinfeld and all the Jewish films I've seen over the years. They seem to do commerce amongst each other, which to me makes sense, because you build economic power, where at the moment the freedom movement sort of meet up here or there. And I would try and tell people, if there's a freedom mechanic, go to him. If there's a freedom carpenter, go to her. If there's a freedom hairdresser, go to her. You know what I mean? And actually start making it financially beneficial to be a part of the movement, because we look after each other. And so that's why I've actually been saying it from the very, very start of the movement, that that I think we should. Daniel calls me up in it all the time. I'll say, what's the joke I say? There's the joke I say, people wanted us to be with the Indigenous. I said, well, look, the Indigenous, I love the Indigenous. I love their, every time, yeah, with them, it's great. But a lot of them live off the government, where the Jews, they own the government. So, better to be like the Jews. And another way, that they have great power. They've been a persecuted race, and yet instead of actually playing the role, okay, we're persecuted, we're the untouchables, leave us alone. They've actually done well in the arts, in every field that they've put themselves forward in, and that's commendable. And so yeah. Anyway, I'm just ranting tonight. I'll get told off for I talk too much on this show. But my main thing tonight was to come on, not so much to talk about the actual conflict, even though it's horrible. But all our lives we've seen horrible conflicts, and this is just sadly another one. Same with the Ukraine and Russian bullshit war.
Well, more people get killed in Syria than in Israel and in other conflicts around, and people don't bat an eyelid. And at the end of the day, Netanyahu's is being threatened with an arrest warrant. The ICJ wants him hauled before their court, which is a good thing. I don't like Netanyahu, but I would also like. It's quite possible, because Trudeau, the beacon of human rights, and Keir Starmer, another beacon of human rights, and our own government, Penny Wong, who's a very big into human rights, the Labor government, they all say that they're going to honor that. They're going to have him arrested, but for some reason they don't mention Assad, the Syrian dictator who killed over 500,000 people. They're happy to do business with the Chinese dictator, Australia's biggest business partner.
Yeah, what about
Putin? Assange, yeah, he suffered a lot. He was in jail.
But maybe 13 years, they could have got him out. They said nothing. So
exactly, they were silent. But what I'd like to see is all of these other leaders, including Trudeau, including the Chinese dictator, including Assad, be on the dock alongside Netanyahu and try it together. That's what I'd like to see.
Where do you think we're heading? Where do you think we're heading now? Do you think everything's going to go back to normal? These conflicts under Trump will sort of dissipate, and we'll enter a more peaceful period? Or do you think with the announcement today of the vaccine, of the vax factory, that because they're going to have to get rid of this product, they're going to have to give it to someone, 100 million vaccines.
Jacinta Allen is going to face justice. And when I mean justice, I'm not talking about vigilante justice. I don't want the anti-terror squad to be smashing down my door. What I mean is she's going to be facing the law, legal justice. She's going to be, one day, she's going to have her day in court. Everyone, essentially, no one gets away with bloody murder. They're either going to face justice in this world or the next world. So I'm very positive about the future. Yes, Australia is a little bit behind. Trump has won the election in the United States and things are happening over there, whereas here they're rolling out an mRNA factory.
Yeah,
so it appears to be the opposite. But I am optimistic about the future.
What do you think will happen in Israel and Gaza? Or what would you hope would happen?
So I think with the current, and I support the idea of a Jewish homeland. I support the Jewish people, my brothers and sisters. I'm clearly, biased. I'm transparent about that, but I'm not a Zionist. I'm opposed to this Zionism on ideological reasons because it's a secular ideology by nature. So I don't think that we will have peace because the Zionist regime is serving the globalists. And so on the other side, Hamas and all these radical Islamist groups are also serving the globalists. So we need, but nevertheless, God is running the world. I believe that things will happen. There is a movement in Israel. And I think, eventually there will be peace as long as we have governments that truly represent the interests of the people. So right now we're in a situation in Australia, in the UK, in Israel, in other parts of the world where the government is at war with its people. There are rogue governments that are in charge and they're serving a higher entity, a globalist entity. So we need to get rid of these governments, and I'm not calling for a violent revolution. I believe that there will be change. Call me naive, but I think it's going to that change is going to be brought about peacefully and through the rule of law.
Of law, because we've just it looks like we're losing another court case. Where do you think the law would come from? Because they seem to own the courts in Australia at the moment.
As Wade said something, he very that kind of he made a really valid point, and a few other people made a point as well. So the puppets that we've got that represent us in the government and the bureaucracy supposedly represent us in the court system. Although they're serving their globalist masters, they also, when we pressure them, because we are the majority, they could succumb to pressure from us and react accordingly. So I believe that change is coming. I believe that they're scared. They're running scared at the moment because there's a lot of revelations that are coming out about the scamdemic, about the vaccines. People are learning the truth, and these people are terrified. And a lot of people in the bureaucracy and in the government, powerful people that have previously promoted the globalist agenda, have now trying to distance themselves from it. So I think change is right around the corner. And I'm quite, like I said, quite optimistic about the future. I think there's going to be some pain along the way. So, call me naive, but in the long run, I think we've got, there's going to be positive change.
Do you know something ironic? I was thinking of this today. I didn't get to do a rant about it. I never thought, because we got very close to World War III with NATO sending Russia missiles under Ukraine's name into Russia, really poking the bear. And we came to World War III, a nuclear war, and no one gave a shit. Everyone was like, yeah, whatever.
Barely batted an eyelid.
Very bad an eyelid. And I never thought I'd see the declaration of a possible World War III as a moment of hope. And what I think it said was, and you can reduce this like a fraction, reduce it down to, say, an abusive family. And in an abusive relationship, there are certain points where the victim suddenly doesn't care anymore. That you can't punch them hard enough. You can't do, they don't care anymore. They're not frightened anymore. And it's the end. Because they never go back to being that frightened. You know what I mean? It's like a kid who gets beaten up by his father, stands up to his father. That time's over. And I think that they've come out with monkeypox, bird flu, the Mad Bill's been defeated, World War III, and there was another one recently that they punted out. I don't think anyone gave a shit. And I think now that they're losing their ability to frighten us. Like there was some doctor today saying, "Oh, there's all these new pandemics coming." And everyone's like, "Yeah, who gives a shit?" And there, I think, is the change, because people only do something if there's something in it for them. And so, going along with the government over COVID, if they were scared of death, if they didn't want to be persecuted, they didn't like it, but they saw there was probably more to gain by going with the government than not, because they saw what happened to the ones that stood up against the government, getting shot by rubber bullets and arrested in your house. Who wants that? Well, now I think they're thinking, no. So many people tell us, and I have so many people come up to me and say, they meet people and say, I've never been the same since I got vaccinated. There's just something wrong with me all the time. I've had some really nice people I've been working with, and they've told me that. They're saying, yeah, always sick, and sick, and then really sick, and so they're different. So there, I think they know they've been duped and betrayed. I think that's what. And the other thing too, this is the power of what we're doing here, Leon, is not that we have the answers, and we don't. That's why I like the fact that you say you're naive. We are naive. That's okay, because we're not here to present the answers. We're sort of presenting the questions. We're basically saying we don't want to go the way the government's going. We don't believe what we've been seeing. So we're trying to make sense of it. We're really good at pointing out the bullshit. You're brilliant at that. But where the truth lies, well, we're searching for it, and with podcasters all around the world, people are following them. People are searching, I think, for a different truth and a different way to live. And I don't think they're looking for a violent world where we're all killing each other. I don't believe that. You were at the rallies. The only thing people held up was religious symbols, and they drew love hearts and offered people
and then they
free
got called
hugs.
Nazis.
And got called Nazis for it. That's right.
So the way it works is, as I said, it's a brilliant strategy. The left promotes it, the far left, the left-wing elite, through the universities, through the media, led by the ABC and Fairfax. So they're the source of the problem. I mean, the police, are from bashing grandmothers and pepper spraying them. They're now in cahoots with the pro-Hamas protesters. They're basically supporting them, arm in arm, marching alongside them. And then they shift that, the blame for the anti-Semitism on the freedom movement. They frame it in such a way, and then it gives them the opportunity to then try and bring in draconian legislation. So it's a brilliant strategy that they put in place.
They're geniuses at it. They've been doing it to us forever. And the only way we'll stop it, the power, this is the ironic power, Leon. The power is with us. We just have to wield it. We just have to do what the Polish have told us, the Hungarians, the Czechoslovakians. We just have to not comply and say, no, we're not doing it. That's it. Because you can't, otherwise you're just going to get further and further down this thing. I'm hoping that every kid under 16, before that change comes in, that they get on their parents' phones and computers and they change all their passwords. And they say, if we're going to be locked out the internet, you can be locked out of the internet with us, because, the oldies won't know how to do it back. The kids are better at the computers. I do wish people would do that and come back. I just back to the. I'll tell you, this is what happened. Back to this poem I wrote. I don't know where it is now. It was called Victoria Street, and I was talking about the brilliance of Melbournians on my tram, that they didn't even realize how beautiful they were, because they were the world, the people of the world, and they weren't hating each other, they weren't killing each other. They were just traveling together to their destination and getting on and helping each other if they could. And so I wrote this poem about it, and I went to a poetry reading, read it out, and I ended up being ABC Radio.
Wow.
Invited me on to read it out on ABC Radio. And the CEO of the trams, or the trams then, they were going to sack me.
Really?
If I went on and read out this poem. They were going to sack me. And they said, you'll be sacked. And I was thinking, well, I don't care. I'm an artist. Sack me. I don't give a shit about this job. I'm going to read out my poem. A QC lawyer got involved with the CEO and got them to back down. But it's not talking about the poem, but it's talking about the strict control of the narrative. That even one lowly tram driver is suddenly going to read out a poem about how much hope there is in ordinary Australians from all their different races, and how much hope we offer to the world. And I'm going to be sacked because I'm going to read it out. Do you know what I mean? It's only small little things, but it just shows. And when I was in the trams, this French company took over, and the Vietnamese who'd left a communist country, everything that these French company brought in, they said, this is communism. This is communism. This is how it works. They silence you. And that's what happened in the depot. And I'm of the belief now that it's not the Jews. It's not any particular race. This is business. I'm really believing that everything now, the corporations, is real business. That and in a way that they've got a perfect, big pharma's got a perfect business model. You know, now they don't even have to test their drugs. They can just release them. And if your son dies of them, you can't touch us. And if your son gets injured and needs medication for the rest of his life, hey, come to us, the people that did it. And you can be a lifelong, it's like the car industry. You know, they don't, like Elon said, they don't make money from selling the cars. They make money from the replacement parts.
I think they're on limited time, though. I really do.
I do too. I do too, because I think they've overplayed their hand.
That's right.
I think they've hurt too many people. And I think they've also allowed us to talk freely on the internet. And what I think, Leon, is what's happening now is we are in the dawn of the great awakening of humanity. Because every time somebody finally goes, you know what? Yeah, fuck it. That's right. They don't go back. You don't sit down once you stand up.
Yeah, and there's a point of no return.
Yeah, even if you don't see the freedom movement around, they're still on our side. All those people that came to Canberra, they're still seen as people who stood up, and guardians, really. And I do think that as we progress, more and more people will suddenly start to stand up. And the more that stand, the more that will join them. And you see that in history all the time. I just hope that this time, though, in this country, we could actually become the shining light for the world, where we show, look, it doesn't matter whether you're a Jew, Muslim, black, white, whatever, or a man, as a woman, whatever, as long as you stay away from the kids. And there's, like this, here in Australia, we offer you the freedom to find out who you are and bring who you are, the best version of who you are, to the narrative. The growing this, and be a shining light for the world, that humans can live in peace and prosperity. But it is not just because she'll be right, it just happened. They were given a choice. Right at the moment, we've been given a choice. Tyranny, which is the path we're on, or we say, fuck that, and we head towards a better country, a better world, and we become the architects of that world. And I don't think I'll see that better world, but I think it's a choice to head there. And I hope more people can see through the theatrics of hate, which they're trying to get you to hate each other, and actually see past that and liberate yourself from the theater of the elite, and celebrate being
It's a very easy trap to fall into.
It's hard
We
going
don't
against
even
it.
we don't
You just
even
don't
know
know.
it when we fall into that trap.
That's right. I believe climate change when it came out, and now it's clear that it's bullshit. But I believe that. You remember Inconvenient Truth? That was pure propaganda.
Al Gore, yeah.
Yeah, that was Al Gore starting an entire industry. You know what I mean? That's all it was. All these windmills, all bullshit. All bullshit.
Fear mongering, saying the world's going to come to an end at 5
Yep,
years or 2 years, and then keep pushing the date back more and more.
Yeah. And there's where the courage lies, Leon. So the courage doesn't lie in big muscles like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It just relies on people like you who have the courage to. I think the Russians have a great term called standing man. To be a standing man, to listen to that inner voice that could be God, and do what you know you have to do, regardless of what's going to happen. And you did it, man. Look, you're still here, plugging away.
We're all still alive. We're all still here, not in concentration camps.
That's right. That's right. We might be the first country in history that avoided tyranny before it even started. Usually it takes 40 years or more.
Like I said at the start of the conversation, we were very close to getting there. It was, I think, a pure divine miracle that we didn't end up there.
They built camps.
They did. They still got them in place. They're still
I actually
intact.
wonder if it was Epic that stopped it. I actually wondered if so many people came to Epic that
they did get scared.
They were stunned by the numbers and stunned by the passion.
And the protests in Melbourne, you had over 500,000 people.
Yeah.
They tried to paint a picture and say that it was 10,000, the media. But you could clearly see that it was more than 500,000 people with helicopter clips.
Yeah. There's hope out there. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for being a part of Cafe Locked Out, Leon.
Thank you for having me, Michael. Always a pleasure.
Oh, no.
Nice to be part of the Cafe Locked Out family with everyone watching.
Yeah, I need a picture of you. Actually, I've got we're ending with an intro. I've got to add all the new podcasters in, so you got to send me an image you like. Not one with the glasses. You look like Mafia Jew. No, I need one of your great face with that great smile. Because I think the way we go forward now is to show that we're not bitter. Yeah, you've screwed us over, but we're not bitter. We're not.
Because that's what they would like us to be.
To have fun.
They want to portray us as a bunch of cookers, extremists. That's all by design, and they're clearly, there are people in the movement that are infiltrators that work for the government, and they lay out various traps, and it's very easy to fall in those traps. But like you said, we can. The movement, the people in the movement, the people that are watching are very strong and resilient people, and they have the capability to see through the bullshit.
Yeah.
And rise above it.
Maybe that's the test, Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go hit the road again. I'm heading up to Yulupna. So, yeah.
What? Say that again?
Yulupna. Yeah. I think it's Aboriginal for when are you guys leaving? The thing. Take care, brother. Thank you for having me on.
Take care. And, thank you. And thanks for watching, everyone.
Yeah. See you then.
God bless.
it? Can you hear our children crying? They're calling from all over this land. They're glaring at today's page.